The minute a skip button was introduced into Zenless Zone 0, I'm sure most of you skipped through a majority of the story. I get it. You wanted to get the polychromes or primogems so you could summon for Ellen, or maybe you just really wanted to meet Zhu Yuan. But missing the story is like having pizza without any sauce, or watching an isekai where the main character isn't killed by a truck. It just doesn't feel complete. That's why in this video, I'll give you a quick summary of all 3 chapters of the main story, so that by the end, you have a general understanding of what's going on in the story of Zenless Zone 0, even if you've already skipped through it. Before we get into that, if you want to see more Zenless Zone 0 content, do consider subscribing to the channel. Let me preface this video by saying that this is just going to be a quick summary of all the major plot points. As such, I won't be able to include every nuance or detail, and my aim here is just to provide you with enough information that you generally understand what's going on. So just keep that in mind if I forget to mention or end up omitting something that was mentioned in the story. As you might have guessed, because I am attempting to cover the whole story here, this video will be longer than usual, but I'll put in timestamps so that you can jump to the specific chapters that you want to see. Also, I've done a video covering some of the major terms used in the game like carrots, hollows, and bamboos, so if you're unfamiliar with the overall setting, that's probably a good place to start. For now, I'll just assume that you are already familiar with these things. One final thing, as you might have guessed, this video is going to spoil the entirety of the 1.0 story, so if you're not interested in knowing what happens, then this is your obligatory spoiler warning. With those disclaimers out of the way, let's start off with Chapter 1. The main characters of this story are a pair of siblings, Wise and Belle, who run a video rental store that acts as a front for their true business. The siblings are secretly proxies, individuals that guide people and help them circumnavigate the supernatural domes referred to as hollows, but we'll get to them in a little bit. At the start of the story, we are actually first introduced to the hollow raiding group, the Cunning Hares, who are made up of Nicole, Ambi, and Billy. These 3 people have been commissioned to steal back a strongbox that was stolen by a local gang. They managed to steal it from them, but as they were making their escape, Ambi and Billy accidentally end up in a nearby companion hollow, functionally getting themselves stuck there. Luckily, their leader Nicole managed to miss the hollow by a hair and quickly searches for the legendary proxy Phaethon to help get her crew out. The main character turns out to be this legendary proxy, and with their help, Ambi and Billy are rescued, but the strongbox was unable to be retrieved due to it being guarded by a dangerous monster, Dullahan. They regroup and re-enter the hollow in order to retrieve the strongbox, only for the main character to be forcibly booted from their bamboo. This leaves the Cunning Hares stranded yet again, with no way to navigate the hollow. On the outside, the reason for the connection disruption is revealed to be a hacker who has burrowed their way into Phaethon's system. They essentially cut off the main character's connection in order to hold the Cunning Hares ransom in exchange for the strongbox. The unknown hacker reveals that within the strongbox is an item of extremely high value and similar in nature to what is described as Rosetta data, which is information used to update holomaps called carrots. It would allow any individual the ability to enter and exit hollows with little to no limitations, and is an extremely rare piece of equipment, with the only other copy being owned by the city administrators themselves, people in very high positions. Luckily, the main character regains control of their system by essentially tricking the hacker, and they return to rescue the Cunning Hares. Before they leave, however, they decide to go for the strongbox. They confront Dullahan, and after a tense fight, they defeat the Ethereal and retake the strongbox, only for another problem to arise, which is that their exit plan is now gone due to the hacker wiping Phaethon's system. So basically, they are kinda stuck again. The main character, however, suggests that they use the tool in the strongbox as it might allow them to escape, at least according to what the hacker has told them. Nicole agrees since she doesn't really have much of a choice, and the main character shoves a data chip into their bamboo and unlocks Super Saiyan level 1. After this, a whole bunch of weird stuff happens. The main character loses consciousness while a disembodied voice talks to them about accepting terms and agreements. Personally, I think this is how an end-user license agreement will be implemented in the future. It's just flashed directly into your brain, but that's probably not what's happening here. After being bombarded by information and being asked whether they would accept the terms, the main character, like any normal person, just agrees to these terms without actually reading them and has likely made a binding vow with this unknown voice. After this, a different voice notes that one of the keys have been activated, referring to the disembodied voice the main character hears as Fairy. Once the main character wakes up, Fairy is revealed to be an AI, one that has now agreed to serve under the main character until a certain time when it can arrive, though it doesn't reveal what this means. Because Fairy can collect data on a citywide scale and can carry out analysis at breakneck speeds, the Phaethon siblings no longer need to rely on the use of a pre-programmed carrot. This also allows them to react to active changes a Hollow might experience, making them far more efficient than any other proxy. Suffice to say, Fairy becomes an indispensable part of Phaethon. From here on, we move on to the next part of the story, one related to the mega corporation Vision and their capital metro renovation project. While both Wise and Bell were dealing with the increase in their electricity bills due to Fairy, the news reports that the Vision Corporation had won the bid to renovate the old capital metro, narrowly beating out their competitor Bellabog Industries. The reason for their successful bid is credited to a reduced time for project delivery and a reduction in cost, but we aren't told at this moment how they managed to achieve this. The first phase of this renewal project involves demolition works to remove the old metro so that a completely new line can be built. On the surface, this appeared as nothing more than a typical construction project, but as Wise and Bell were listening to the newscast, a Theron going by Nekomata bursts into the video store claiming the company is lying and that there's an entire conspiracy behind all of it. Now, the sequence of the story doesn't really flow in a linear way. There's flashbacks and stuff, but I'm just going to tell you what exactly happened so it's easier to understand. Essentially, a few days before Nekomata met Phaethon, she had commissioned the Cunning Hares to go after a family heirloom that she had lost in the Hollow. The same Hollow the metro construction is coincidentally taking place in. As they make their way through the Hollow, they end up in a location where the demolition works were scheduled to happen, and instead of it being completely vacated as Vision claims, there are actually a bunch of people there. So recall earlier I mentioned that Vision had won the bid because they had reduced project costs? Well, they could only accomplish that by not relocating the nearby residents, which they were supposed to do before carrying out the demolition works. By blowing up the area regardless of the safety to the residents, they could save money and nobody would even know. Two birds with one rather explosive stone, or at least that's what the Cunning Hares suspect. Because the train carrying explosives had already started to move towards the old metro, Nekomata was sent out to find Phaethon while the Cunning Hares stayed behind to help the residents. Long story short, they managed to prevent the rather disastrous demolition plans and the leftover citizens were safely escorted out of the demolition site. Vision's deception had been exposed, and it was even revealed that the director of the company, Charles Pullman, had been manipulated by his own secretary, Sarah. As the dust settled, public security arrived on the site to apprehend the Vision employees involved in the conspiracy, but the mastermind, Miss Sarah, had disappeared. Bellabog Industries, the company that had lost the original bid, also came on site with media and provided assistance to the residents. This is basically the entirety of Chapter 1's story. Throughout this whole chapter, there was a whole other bit about Nekomata and how she was once part of the gang that the Cunning Hares stole the strongbox from, and that her commission was a way to get revenge on the group. But she ended up joining the Cunning Hares because she realized that they were decent people, but I won't talk too much about this since it's not particularly important to the overarching story. We also meet and help a lost maid, Corinne, find her friends, but she won't become relevant until later in the story. After this whole debacle, Bellabog Industries were given the rights to the Metro Renewal Project, and from there we move into Chapter 2. Now, because this is a summary of the story, I'm not going to go too in-depth with the members of Bellabog Industries, but generally speaking, Anton is the person in charge of PR, Ben is the finance manager and pseudo bodyguard of the company president, Grace is their head engineer and AI expert, and Kolida is the company president. As you might have noticed, Kolida is pretty young and became the president of the company after her father, the previous president, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. We'll talk about him a bit later. One of the main selling points of Bellabog Industries is their construction equipment are all AI assisted. This means that they can work without supervision for an extended period of time and can even enter hollows as they are mostly unmanned. However, recently, their equipment has started to experience several malfunctions and some have functionally gone rogue entering the dead end hollow despite not being instructed to. Bellabog Industries suspects that other rival companies are basically sabotaging them and thus have recruited the main character as a proxy to help them navigate the hollow and retrieve their equipment. After finding all three of their rather weird AI-driven machinery, it's discovered that the reason they went haywire in the first place wasn't because of some corporate sabotage, but rather because they had picked up a signal that was transmitted from deep within the hollow. In addition, one of the rogue machines mentions that it was responding to its master and referred to them as cores. Cores is revealed to be the name of Kolida's father, the ex-president of Bellabog Industries who had gone missing long ago. Because of this, Bellabog Industries commissions the main character once more to help them find the source of this signal and figure out whether it is indeed cores, and so back into the hollow they go. They managed to triangulate the location of the signal, and as it turns out, it came from one of their old construction projects, the Pioneer Memorial Plaza. What's even more interesting is that this was the very last project Kolida's father had worked on. Upon reaching this location, they find the very first prototype of their AI-assisted machinery, one Cores had worked on at the very beginning of Bellabog Industries' formation. The equipment was seemingly working on the monument in the plaza and was left abandoned, holding up the last piece of the sculpture in place. The group also finds signs of struggle within the pilot seat of the prototype and a memory unit which seemingly belonged to Kolida's father. As they prepared to bring the equipment back with them, the piece of monument the machine was holding up fell to the ground, and to everyone's surprise, an ethereal or mutant or god knows what that creepy thing is came out of the monument. The monster appeared rather foreign and even disturbing, and had the unique ability to interface and integrate machinery it made contact with. With this ability, it attached itself to the other Bellabog machines and began attacking the group. After a rather tough fight and with the help of the prototype, Kolida managed to suppress the weird creature, and public security officers were called in to deal with the situation. Bellabog Industries handed over the site and what they found over to public security, all except for the memory unit they found in the cockpit of the prototype. Public security would then arrange for the unknown creature to be studied by the Hollow Affairs and Naturalization Department, or HAND, to figure out what exactly this monster is. From here, Bellabog Industries would continue on with its project, while Phaethon searched for a way to access the memory unit Kolida had found. In order to do this, they had to search for one of the best hackers in the industry, Rain. Luckily, Nicole was acquainted with Rain and offered to help search for them, but it would take some time before she can pinpoint Rain's location. So in the meantime, Wise and Belle take a much needed break and enjoy the sights and sounds of Lumina Square, one of the major public districts of New Eridu. This is when they meet the public security officers Zhu Yuan and Qing Yi. Now, in this part of the story, there's actually a whole lot of stuff that goes on which involves the main character helping the officers, but it's not necessarily important to know the details. The gist of it is that throughout the city, there has recently been an increase of events that has led to electronic equipment malfunctioning. Cars going out of control, Bangboos experiencing errors, and all manner of weird stuff. The whole of the Chapter 2 intermission is figuring out why this is happening. It's revealed that a gang has been trial testing a portable EMP in order for them to steal from an armored public security transport. Initially, it seems like any random theft, but much later, we find out that the transport was actually en route to Han's headquarters to deliver the remnants and gathered evidence of the weird ethereal Bellabog had found. It seems that someone hiding in the shadows had orchestrated this whole thing to ensure that Han wouldn't have a chance to examine the ethereal. It is then revealed that the previous assistant of Vision's director, Miss Sarah, the one that disappeared after Chapter 1, was in fact the person who planned this, or at least had something to do with it. It seems that she and whoever she was working for had wanted to collect the monster themselves, and why they tricked the Vision Corporation, but after that plan fell through, she resorted to stealing it instead. Sarah, which isn't even her real name by the way, and whoever it is she is working with, wanted this evidence and material for themselves, but for what reason, we don't really know. They attempted to also silence Perlman and have him take the fall, but he reveals he has information on them which he threatens to release. Not wanting this to happen, Sarah, or whatever her name is, reports this to her superior and mentions that she will take care of it. After this cutscene, we get information from Nicole regarding Rain, and from here, we move into Chapter 3. At the start of this chapter, Nicole is preparing herself to represent the abandoned citizens and victims of Vision's project as they file for a class action lawsuit. Where she got the ability to practice as a lawyer, I do not know, but maybe in a post-apocalyptic world, certifications don't matter too much. Her credentials aside, Nicole has recently been receiving unexplained blank messages from the hacker Rain, and what's weirder, all traces of the hacker seem to have disappeared. She sends her team over to Phaethon to inform them about Rain and that she is worried about her. Given Phaethon is also looking for Rain, they decided to search for her while Nicole deals with her court stuff. Phaethon and the Cunning Hares track down the source of the blank messages to the Ballet Twins building, which is located within a hollow and is rumored to be super haunted. As they make their way through the building, things become increasingly spookier. The lights start to flicker, weird sounds are heard, and even ghost-like ethereals appear randomly. As the crew makes their way deeper into the building, they are suddenly attacked by an unknown group of assailants. Luckily, among these people is Corinne, the maid we helped out early in the game, and this is where we officially meet the Victoria housekeeping faction, a group of butlers and maids who cater to the whims of very high-profile clients. While the confrontation started off with a fight, because the main character and the Cunning Hares had assisted Corinne in the past, the tension quickly dissipates, and we learn from their leader, Lycon, that they are here at the behest of their employer. They are tasked by the owners of the Ballet Twins building to provide maintenance services and essentially clean up the building, clearing it of any trespassers or ethereals. It is at this moment the Cunning Hares learn that they are required to be at the courthouse with Nicole and have to leave. Lycon then suggests that they instead accompany the main character in search for Rain while simultaneously cleaning up the building as per their employer's instructions. With both parties in agreement, the Cunning Hares leave to board the Department of Justice airship to the courthouse along with Perlman, Nicole, and the victims, while the main character continues their search for Rain with the Victoria household. As they travel through the building, clearing out any lingering ethereals and turning on the lights, they face several obstacles like the power going out and emergency shutter doors closing without warning. It's almost as if someone or something is preventing them from progressing. Regardless, they continue moving forward until they find Rain's backpack. Inside was a recording device that played back a song, and as the main character tries to figure out what was going on, an ethereal appears out of nowhere and attacks them. Luckily, the Victoria household was able to protect the main character, who then used the recording to lure the ethereal away. As they try to figure out what has happened, the group is attacked once more. Ellen is able to defeat them, though she collapses from low blood sugar. The enemies don't appear to be ethereals but are instead mercenaries, something the group did not expect as the building was supposed to be abandoned. After transporting the now unconscious mercenaries out of the hollow, Lycon and Rina were able to extract information from some of them. We learned that most of the weird stuff that has been going on in the building was the work of the mercenary group who were trying to deter the main character from reaching their leader and Rain. All the flickering lights and malfunctions were really just them. Well, everything except for the weird ethereal. Eventually, the group reaches the mercenaries' location only to find Rain being held captive. The mercenaries attempt to unalive Rain, but the main character and the Victoria household swiftly rescues her while the mercenaries made their escape. Meanwhile, Billy suddenly calls the main character out of nowhere and informs them that everyone on the airship had been knocked out, and the airship itself is now heading for the Ballet Twins building. Now, I know this sounds a little bit confusing, but I'll explain everything. Basically, the mercenaries were hired to hijack the airship and bring it to the Ballet Twins building. To accomplish this, they hired and basically kidnapped Rain, and with her hacking abilities, they managed to remotely intercept the airship and change its travel path. Before escaping, the mercenaries blew up the only access to the roof, preventing the main character from undoing their work. This forces the main character's party to find an alternative route via a spatial fissure, but not before having to deal with the weird ethereal they encountered earlier, the one obsessed with the song. They eventually reach the roof, and the main character, along with Rain and the Victoria household members, were able to wrest control of the airship and ensured it landed safely. After they rescued the knocked out passengers, Perlman managed to escape using the airship and ran off into the outer ring. Public security appears and helps transport everyone out of the hollow. After everything settles down, Rain explains what had happened, and when asked who was behind all this, Rain says that she doesn't know, but overheard a few things. It seems that the main goal was to essentially take out Perlman, and it's very likely that the mercenaries' employers are actually the very same people that met with Perlman in his jail cell. You know, his former assistant Sarah. Rain also overhears one other thing. The word sacrifice, though she's not sure what it means. With Rain now safely back where she belongs, the main character is able to now ask for her help in decoding the memory drive Bellabog Industries found in the cockpit of their prototype way back in Chapter 2. The memory drive contained an audio recording of Kolida's father, and we learned that the monster in the monument is also referred to as Sacrifice. This means that the group that had manipulated the Vision Corporation is also the one that hired the mercenaries to get rid of Perlman, and is the very same organization that knows what the monster in the monument is. Before the story ends, we see Lycon and Rina observing the main character's shop, and it's revealed that the Victoria members were also investigating the very same thing that the main character is. They are also aware of the monster and why it's called Sacrifice. Rina asks Lycon whether they can allow the main character to continue on given the truth they have unearthed, and Lycon responds that their master, who hasn't been revealed by the way, has given them a new task. To guide and assist the main character, but at the same time to monitor them as they are now in too deep. From here, the story concludes, and the main character goes back to running their shop and eating noodles. That's basically the entire story in a nutshell. Before I close out the video, let me just summarize all the cliffhangers and unanswered questions we currently have. First, there's a weird unexplained monster ethereal found within a monument referred to as Sacrifice. Related to that is a shadow organization who wants this weird monster, or at least is trying to cover up its existence. Then there's also the Phaethon siblings' personal mission, which is related to their past life and old Eridu. We also don't know the origins and creators of the AI keys like Fairy, and finally there's the unknown master of the Victoria household. Each of these things are likely going to be key plot points moving forward, with the main one likely revolving around the sacrifice thing. Now, as I mentioned way back at the start of the video, this is a summarized version of the 1.0 Zenless story. There are a lot of details I am omitting here that can give a bit more context to the story. Each person we meet actually develops a pretty strong relationship with Phaethon, but I can't possibly include the nuances of each of those people within this video if I want to keep it concise. Regardless, I hope that this is sufficient enough to at least ensure you know what the overall story is. Plus, just so you know, the sequencing here isn't exactly the same, but I've tried to tell this story as close as possible to how it actually unfolded. If I happen to miss out any crucial details, feel free to bring them up in the comments. I'll be talking about some of these cliffhangers in another video altogether, and I hope this video has helped whoever is watching understand the story a bit better. At least when 1.1 releases, you won't be completely lost. I'll end the video here. If you found the video to be helpful, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and as usual, have a nice day.